All right. Well, everybody, thanks for joining us today. I'm Nick Lopez, host of the Code 3 Industries podcast. Got a very special guest with me here today, a retired FBI agent for over 28 years, Mr. Scott Payne. How you doing today, Scott?
I'm doing good, buddy. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being on. Yeah, so just getting into it. I know, like we said, I just read your book, but for those who are maybe a little bit unfamiliar, with your story, can you just kind of give us a little bit of a brief, just a brief overview of how you got started in law enforcement and going into the FBI?
Well, I was a real cop first. I always throw that out there. That makes some people mad in the bureau, but I'm like, it's true, you know.
Got you.
I learned in New York City pretty quick that I get introduced by a detective, an NYPD detective, and they'd be like, "Hey, this is Scott, so and so's FBI," and they'd be like, "How you doing?" And he'd be like, "No, no, no, this guy was on the job before," and they'd be like, "Oh, how you doing?" And I'm like, "All right, that's a difference."
There you go.
Um, Now I went to college and not really knowing what I was going to do,
Mm,
and I mean I bounced and I played ball and all this stuff, and I kind of had that. I mean I had the mentality anyway of that kind of shepherd, bully of bullies, kind of protect and serve kind of thing. But when I came across a criminal justice course in college, that's when I was like, oh man, I really like this. And then that parlayed into me getting to know local cops while I was bouncing and then doing a ride along. And that was pretty much it. But after being, I was at the sheriff's office in South Carolina for 5 years. So the last 2 of those 5 years, I was a vice narcotics investigator. First three, uniform patrol. And then I applied with the FBI and got hired. And first office was New York City. And then I did that. And as far as being stationed permanently, I was in New York City and then I was on the border of Mexico for 6.5 years. And then I came to Tennessee and punched out in 2021.
wow. First and foremost, congratulations on an incredible career. But and I actually just wanted to touch on that, going back to your time, the sheriffs, and really learning your trade craft, as an undercover agent, or at least going into like Vice. What was it? Because obviously I know you got into it, and we'll get into it more regarding your time like undercover with the FBI. But what was it like, just the process of, really learning how to be, like a Vice officer, or learning how to really, really go undercover?
Um, well, I guess that's when I started learning that it's really not acting per se. It's me being me and applying my skill set and my mentality or whatever to the situation. I mean, don't get me wrong. If a quick buy, a street level buy, I mean, I don't look like a crackhead. I was 270 something pounds. I'm like, I don't look like I'm jonesing for dope. Not that kind of dope anyway. But I just started learning from there. I mean, I had some great mentors and they were senior narcotics officers and they took me under their wing and taught me a lot. And then at the state level, I went and got certified in undercover techniques and that's when I started getting that niche. But it's also, when you're on the narcotics squad, at least the one I was on, it's also about developing sources and operating sources, which to me goes hand in hand with undercover work. I mean, it's essentially they're doing what we do as undercovers. They're going in, we're wiring them up, they're getting the evidence. I mean, there's things we have to do to make sure that it stands up in court, like, check them before the buy, check their vehicle before they buy, take all their personal money off of them, surveil them, all this stuff to show, hey, we know that this person went in here and did that. But as I said, essentially they're doing the same thing I did as an undercover. It's just that they're not a bonded law enforcement officer, and a lot of them had felonies on their record.
I see. And in your own opinion, working undercover, working Vice narcotics, there's such a unique talent to doing it. I was just patrol. Um, I never went Vice, undercover or anything like that. But I've kind of heard like you either have it or you don't, because you have to be able to blend in a certain type of way. Do you think any officer can really hone in that craft, or do you think it just takes a special type of unique personality to be able to do it?
I'm going to fall somewhere in the middle because it's like being a musician, like I'm a musician. Did I ever take a lot of lessons? No. Did I inherit it? Yeah, my whole family's musical, but I've seen people get taught to technically play.
Mhm.
Um, if you're thinking of that general, hey, I'm a narc, I'm going out here and buying dope, maybe no, that's not for everybody.
Mhm.
But if you look at like, what do we need? What are you? What was your background? Well, I was an accountant. Well, then be an accountant. You know, I mean, you just speaking the truth. I grew up landscaping. I talk about landscaping. I'm telling the truth, but I'm applying it to the alias or persona that I have. Um, but that argument's made a good bit, and I can totally go either way on it. That's
Mhm.
why I said I'm falling in the middle. I'm doing the Switzerland. I'm
Gotcha.
falling right in the middle because I've had people come up and go, "Man, I couldn't do what you do," but they're looking at me in a one percenter biker gang, all tatted up, long hair, either a big full beard or goatee and cyber, whatever. And but I asked them, I go, well, what did you do? What's your background? And maybe you're not right for this case, but you might be right for another case. But yeah, I will say it takes a different breed to work undercover. Um, an acquaintance of mine, Buddy, he uh, he pointed it out, and I don't know if I realized it or had I known it and forgot it, with the lost brain cells over the years. But the that biker gang, that one percenter, you're a one
Mhm.
percenter because you're against the 99%. You wear that as a badge of honor. Well, it's 1% of law enforcement that does deep undercover. So I guess essentially we're one percenters. So yeah, I try not to dehumanize and I try to say like positive, things, but yeah, it's definitely not for everybody.
I get you. And try not to go too much into the trade craft and kind of what goes into the deep reaches of undercover work as far as like FBI and how you go about things. But just what was that process like, at least with the FBI, you know, again, going from, being vice and narcotics at the sheriff's department to then being an undercover federal agent? Was there a big difference as far as like teaching, or there was? Okay.
Yeah, so the FBI certification process, I don't know what they're doing now. I retired in June of 21. I would bet that it's similar to what we did for umpteen years.
Mhm.
We're always evolving, and like if there's a different crime threat, then we're probably going to start recruiting people that can work that crime threat. But yeah, the to go from a sheriff's office and you don't have a whole lot of stuff in the state to help you backstop yourself and make you look real. There's only a few things you can do. You get to a federal agency like the FBI, and I mean, we've got world working groups and everything else. It's just a much bigger machine, and you have way more tools at your disposal. That was the big thing. The other thing is, I was an art guy, so was I comfortable in drug scenarios? Yeah. But if you go through the undercover school, you're going to go through every scenario. So you can't be like, it's not necessarily a liability thing. It's just fairness. Like if you're going to go to a SWAT tryout, and then me and you are grading, I don't know, the single dwelling entry, we're going to grade everybody. So it's this consistent across, but you're also going to go through everything in that tryout. Same thing at the UC school. So I might be in a comfortable environment in a drug scenario, but then the next scenario, I might be in a foreign counterintelligence thing, and I've got to go with what I've learned so far at the school with my skill set and try to do well on the scenario. So there's all, I mean, it runs the gamut: domestic terrorism, international terrorism, because the FBI works about everything. So that was a huge difference in the UC school at the FBI. Plus, it's a 2 week school, no days off. We're very big on sleep deprivation. Not a hazing thing at all.
Mhm.
It's in there for a reason. There's training objectives for everything, and everything is based off of something that really happened.
Wow. So there's God, just a
It,
myriad of different.
it's intense.
It's it
You know,
is.
and even though like I say, I go in a drug scenario and I fail miserably and I die,
Uh,
and now it's like, all right, buck up, little camper, because you got about an hour before you got to go back into the next scenario, and it's completely different. So
man.
yeah, I mean, generally you get training during the day, you get classes, and then through the evening you're role playing. You're going through scenarios, and you're probably going to be the primary on at least two scenarios. And like I said, everybody every candidate in the UC school will go through every scenario.
Oh, it is incredibly intense.
Yeah.
Yeah. For lack of a better phrase.
I was on
Um,
the bubble. That's what they used to call it. They go, I don't think we say it anymore because I don't think it's not politically correct, but it's not sensitive. I don't know. I'm like, well, I'm on the bubble. That means it's getting ready to pop. That means,
right.
how do you want me to phrase it? I've got two strikes and I'm looking at two strikes and I've got one more left.
Right.
Yeah, I got pulled out of the class. I got pulled out of class because some people were thinking I was, because I'm a jovial character, and it's also a self-defense mechanism when you're stressed or when I'm stressed or panicky, I'll start cracking jokes and stuff, and there were some people concerned that I wasn't taking it serious enough, and I remember getting called out of class. We were going on a break, whatever, 10-minute break, and
Mhm.
there I was getting ready to walk out, and the two people running the class were like, "Hey, country, can we talk to you for a second?" And I'm like, yeah. We're at Quantico. We walk through the little brick, whatever, and we go into an empty classroom. They say, have a seat. I sit down, and one of them sits on the desk, and the other sits next to me. And they said, how do you think you're doing so far? And I said, well, I thought I was doing pretty good until about 2 minutes ago when you asked me to come in here and sit in this chair. So clearly, I'm not doing as good as I thought I was. But I made it.
And just touching on, just your undercover work in general. I know you delve into it a lot more in the book regarding the neo Nazis going to the base, the KKK, the outlaw motorcycle gangs. Um, was there any one case within, the ones that you went into that stood out more than the others, or
As
one that
in, like,
uh, regarding, well, let maybe talk about the outlaw motorcycle uh gang.
mhm. They
Just for those who don't, I'm sorry. Just for those who aren't aware, how long did you go undercover with the Outlaws?
It was about a 2-year case.
To your case.
And that's the longest one I've done, the
Mhm.
deep cover. Now I've been full-time undercover for a year, and I've been full-time undercover for a year and a half, which is kind of rare. And from my experiences in the Bureau, that was rare to see. Um, because we're still case agents and your bosses want you in the desk working the case, not gone working somebody else's case in another division. Because unfortunately, the FBI still hadn't figured out, well, maybe they figured out since I retired, but I doubt it, figured out how to let my division where I'm assigned to get credit for me working in another division. So you always have that battle. But yeah, the Outlaws was a 2-year case. One Percenter Biker Club, one of the top four. Usually they're considered number two. It's usually Hell's Angels, then the Outlaws, then the Banditos and the Pagans, and then everybody else after that. But it was a good case. I mean, what I learned well after the case and through the rest of my career is I thought, man, well, I'm gonna have a bunch of these under my belt.
Mhm.
But to be deep undercover in a violent group. Not saying all outlaws are violent, but kind of goes with the territory. You're
Right.
a 1% club, but the chapters that I was working against, full of violent individuals committing crimes all day long, no jobs, just straight thugs. In order, at least in my opinion and my experience, in order to be deep undercover in a situation like that and to be able to go 2 years, that was kind of rare from what I saw because, and I'm not saying that's a me thing, that's a team thing, that's a divine intervention thing, and the stars just aligning because so many times you can start a case and then the source craps the bed, or you can start a case and somebody gets hurt, or you can start a case and management says, we're shifting our priorities. We don't have time to put manpower to this, and it just never happened again for me in my career. Um, Plus, once you do a 1% club and you get that kind of exposure for 2 years,
Mhm.
I can't ever do a club that's involved or supporting the Outlaws. Because if I went to one regional run on the East Coast, I'm probably running into somebody that I've met. Um, and maybe I could do maybe I could do one of their arch rivals like the Hells Angels.
Mhm.
But what if they end up in a fight across the street from each other and somebody from the Outlaws side goes, "That dude's a Fed," you know? I mean, it's very tricky. So,
And then, for those who don't know, like how, because obviously being able to infiltrate the Oz for over 2 years and working undercover for over 2 years, how does that begin? Like, how do you begin that?
okay, yeah, it's a case by case basis. There's all kinds of ways to start a case. I mean, in law enforcement, it could be somebody calling in a complaint. It could be you stopping a car,
Right.
which led to a dope seizure, which led to an interview, which led to somebody saying, "Well, I got it from this person." And you're like, "Oh man." So it was traditional law enforcement investigations and state and locals that I think began that whole case. I came in after they'd already been investigating everything. And that's what happens a lot of times on these long-term, deep undercovers. A case team's already been working that group or that specific case probably for a year or more, and now they get to a point where they could say, "Hey, we wouldn't mind trying the undercover technique."
Mhm.
And the undercover technique, you just can't really go out there and do it willy-nilly. You have to be able to show, kind of like a wiretap, that you've exhausted your means on other avenues of traditional law enforcement investigation or logical investigative techniques because it's very invasive. It's just like it's considered a sophisticated investigative technique. So they'd already been working it, and they had a lot of good intelligence. So when I met them to be interviewed as a possible undercover for the case, they started laying out things to me, and I gave ideas that I thought might work, the way I would like to do things, and they picked me. And I used that intelligence, and I started going to a bar they frequented, but I would go kind of when they weren't there, just to kind of get a lay of the land. And I'm in Massachusetts with this accent. I mean, as soon as I order my first drink, somebody's like, "Man, where are you from?" And I'm 6'4". I was probably like 280 then. You can attract attention. Um,
Stood out just a little bit.
it depends. It depends. I've been in a room with 15 dudes, and I'm the shortest, smallest person in there.
Oh shoot.
I walk in, and all I saw was nipples, and I'm like, "Where in the heck do they grow you dudes at?" I'm like, "What the?"
What are they feeding y'all over there?
That's what I'm like. I'm gonna wait outside. I'm like, "Jeez." I don't like
Man.
this at all. But yeah, I mean, so we went with that, and they had good intelligence on a couple of members, and their intelligence was right. I mean, the guy liked to be the center of attention. He loved to have big guys around him. These are my guys, kind of thing. And I just played to that. For me, it was kind of like what's sexy to them. I don't mean like let me put my hair in pigtails
Right,
and put lipstick
right.
on. I
That's a
mean
different type of
like,
undercover.
yeah, yeah. And I wouldn't say I hadn't done something like that before, but they better be ready to come in when I give the code word. I said bathroom, 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 bathroom. Get in here. And then it's your buddies on the other side waiting. Oh, wait a minute, wait a minute. Let him sweat it out.
Let's see how
Yeah.
see how it goes.
Yeah, let's tell you. Yeah. I'm not sure he said bathroom yet. Let's let it rest a little bit. And then over beers later, I'm like, you son of a. But yeah, I mean, what I mean is like they love money, right? What can I do to for me, mostly ran on greed, you know.
Mhm.
I mean, I talk about it in the book in detail in multiple occasions, but even going back to the narcotics level, just rolling around the corner and there's a guy on the corner and you're like, holy crap, man. 2 weeks earlier, I jerked that dude out of a bed on the Southern Command search warrant. I wasn't my case. It was time for an arrest. They needed help. We went in, we got the brief, we go search warrant, hit the house, go in. I go into a room, dude's in the bed. I mean, let me see your hands, whatever. Put them on the ground, cuff them, end up back at the um, Southern Command or Northern Command precinct, wherever we're at. And then, yeah, like 2 weeks later, I'm rolling around the corner and I'm like, oh, I'm in the passenger seat, Source driving. We're just buying crack. And I look and I go, oh, man, that's the dude I jerked out of bed 2 weeks earlier. And then he looks at me as if he knows who I am. And he's walking around the window and I'm crapping gold bricks. You know, on the inside, I'm sweating. I'm like, oh man, I'm freaking out. That fight or flight or freeze. And he gets right up to the window and he's looking at me. And I just do like a, what's up? And I'm holding my money. And he looks at the other guy because he saw that money and then did the deal. And when we arrested him, he's like, man, I knew it was you. And I was like, you almost knew it was me. I said, but you saw that money and you let that greed win. And
Yeah,
that's kind of the game sometimes.
man, and I uh I wanted to talk a little bit about, I think something that kind of doesn't really get talked about a lot as far as working undercover, working these cases is the human element of,
Yep.
going undercover, especially for this long and having to infiltrate and having to get to know these guys. And, at points, obviously, you know, you got to bring these guys up on charges. But at
Yeah.
some point, in order to get along, you have to find things in common with these guys. You have to go out, you got to pal around with them. You got to be able to ingratiate yourself and come off as a friend. Like, and obviously at human element, again, you're gonna develop bonds. These guys are, be your brothers and they have to see you that way. And so is it hard, like after a while of being able to really kind of split that? Look, I gotta at some point these guys gotta get brought up on charges, but at the same time, like I'm human. I've developed bonds with these guys.
I'll say yes, but definitely more so on some cases than others. Like
Mhm.
if I'm going to meet a pedophile who's hiring me to kill the kid he molested or is accused of molesting, I don't need to bond with that guy.
Right,
Nor am I probably going to. I mean, if
right,
I got to for the case, I'll try um, to get that confession or whatever. But
right.
yeah, with the Outlaws case, yeah, there was some friendships there that I developed, and let me say it this way: there are cases that I've done
Mhm.
long-term deep undercover. I created those relationships, those bonds, and I betrayed them because they got arrested. But we were still friends after that. So that's
Really?
weird. Yeah, that's weird. But that's kind of the way my life has been. Um, because I was still kind of real.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I'll try to find something. I mean, like if you, I say again as if I've told you this story before, but
No, it's
I do
okay.
I do this all the time because I'm like, but I've never talked to you. I keep saying again,
No,
but
no
um,
worries.
uh, the like on a state and local level, if all I'm doing is three quick buys or whatever that solicitor's office or DA's office wants, say it's three buys and we hit them with a search warrant. Say it's five buys. I don't need to buy. I mean, I'm coming up. If it's street level, especially if I'm just rolling up to your house or rolling up to the corner, I'm just a face, right? But when you're hanging, yeah, I mean, when you're bonding and we're out all night together and I'm gaining their trust and they're gaining mine, technically, um, yeah. And also, it's a safety net for me. I mean, it's not really trained. It's not something you put in an operations plan or an operations order, but there's certain people like I knew and the team knew, hey, is so and so going to be there tonight? Is Big Scott going to be there tonight? I'm like, yeah, I'm picking him up before I go. And everybody would be like, including me, would be like, okay, cool. Because I knew that dude loved me enough, or at least I believed he loved me enough to where if there was going to be a fight, he had my back, and I had his. You know,
Mhm.
that's my lifeline in that fight. Not that is the closest lifeline I've got in that fight. Not the guys in the van across the street. Because if the crap hits the fan, it can be over. And I mean, you're law. I mean, I can show video after video where teams on the other side of the adjoining hotel room door. Bad guy walks in to sell dope and it's a rip. He
Yep.
walks in and just starts firing, gets off 8 shots before they can even get the door open.
Yep.
So if it's going to hit the fan, you need to be prepared for that. And anyway, yeah. So I bond. Uh, that case was, and of course I lay it out in the book that case was definitely the one that Big Scott was the closest bond I've ever formed on any undercover, and it's because I think we really were friends, and we really were so much alike. Um, but yeah, that was one. But even as I progressed in my career and got wiser and older and whatever else, I
Mm.
still, I mean, like I was on one in Tennessee when I moved to Tennessee. I mean, the guy was a criminal, but we bonded. I'm not saying I agree with everything he did,
Right.
but I mean, you know, that was one of the guys that, you know, after the arrest, he would still call my undercover phone and be like, "Hey, it's your boy. I know you're just doing your job. I just want you to know I love you, buddy." Now, was he trying to play me so he could get a lesser charge? I don't know, but I'm like, you know, I'm like, yeah, well, I love you too, man. You know, no harm, no foul. I mean, it's just
Right.
like the old Bugs Bunny cartoon, man. Sheepdog, coyote. They clock in. Morning, Sam. Morning, Ralph. All day long, they go against each other and they clock out. See you
Right.
tomorrow. See you tomorrow.
Right. And it's and you know what? And that's the business, right? But I mean the fact that they,
Can be. It can also
can
be
be
very, very dangerous. And I mean, depending on who you're working, you got to know that kind of stuff. I mean, like sometimes it might work if you're in a group when if the crap hits the fan and you go, "Hey, I'm an undercover, I'm a federal agent." That may be enough to say, "Oh," but some groups may look at murdering you as a badge of honor, a
right.
badge of courage, and they'll wear that thing right into prison. Yeah, I killed a Fed. So it's still there's always a propensity for violence when you're in law enforcement, especially, I think.
And just going off of that and just going off just how things can go sideways so quick, especially working undercover. I know you go into it in the book, and for those who aren't aware, regarding you were wired up and with the outlaw motorcycles gang,
Mhm.
and you get taken into what you call as a basement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A mix between a basement and a crawl space. Because the basement's being very generous. And it was tight. I mean, I couldn't stand up straight, and I could probably touch the wall on both sides.
Mhm.
My memory shows it a lot smaller because I had tunnel vision at the time, but I know I couldn't stand up straight. Yeah, so after a year and a half undercover, doing all kinds of jobs, which were criminal jobs, and they made money, and I was doing criminal things with them, and they were like, "Hey, everything's cool." Multiple jobs. Yeah, I gained their trust. Then they start carjacking vehicles, telling me they got to get rid of them. Then they're stealing cars off a lot. Then Hell's Angel president gets murdered. There's all kinds of stuff going on. The case team's also running a wiretap. They're pulling double shifts, one with me, one with the wire, and they were getting all kinds of dope deal evidence and stuff like that. Well, we upped the ante at a year and a half in to do a drug deal, and what we found out later is that apparently it went all the way to the top. In other words, Outlaws, Taunton, Massachusetts chapter was going to be doing this. Taunton and Brockton chapters were going to be participating in this drug deal, and it went to the national president, and the national president sent it back down and said, "Hey, has anybody really checked this guy?" And they were like, "Well, man, we've done all kinds of jobs with him, and we're not in cuffs." They called them bracelets, you know. We're not in cuffs, but he said they didn't care, which kind of goes against the whole argument of we're not an organization. There are
Right.
people that break the law, but we don't know each other's business. And I'm like, well, then how does the national president find out about a drug deal in the Taunton, Brockton, Massachusetts area? But I didn't know it was going to happen. I don't want to say I got lax, but a year and a half in, you know, and
Right.
and I go to the clubhouse. Some weird exchange in the beginning happened. Um, I'm told to go away and come back later, even though they just called me and told me to come over because they were still having church, which is their mandatory weekly meeting. They just call it church. So I go into the clubhouse. I'm wired to the hilt because this is the day before we're going to do the drug deal. And of course, it's my job to get as much evidence as I can for the team, for the United States Attorney's Office. And I walk in, and the number two closest relationship I had was the enforcer for him, and his street name was Clothesline. And Clothesline said, "Hey, Tex, can I talk to you for a minute?" And I was like, "Yeah." They carried me down into that basement and or crawl space, and they ended up stripping me at gunpoint. And I had two recording devices on me and a listening device, and they missed them. It was close. I mean,
Wow.
I was naked from the ankles up. They checked me for everything. I thought I was done. Of course, I'm freaking out during that whole thing. You can hear my voice is higher. You can hear that I'm not even enunciating well, even though I probably don't anyway because I'm a Southerner. But or maybe I enunciate some things too much. You know what I mean? We're big on our consonants, you know. But yeah, they stripped me at gunpoint. I mean, I forgot my middle name because of the stress. They told me to write everything down. And then when I was finished getting patted down and checked and all that, standing there naked, I pulled my pants back up. I think I put my boots on, and then he starts grabbing clothing that I had on. And there was a recording device in one of those pieces of clothing and he starts kneading it with his hands and looking at it and going up. And I'm like, man, we're talking like 2006, 2007. And so, I mean, technology is way better now than it was then, as it always does. It gets, I mean, you used to not even be able to get a terabyte. Now you can get like 2 or 3 terabytes and
Hmm.
it's only about that big. You're like,
Right.
how? But if he would have kept going up, he probably would have felt something. And it was
Wow.
close. It was close, and they almost found it.
I just, I mean, what's going through your head at this point as he's needing it's getting closer and closer?
Uh, Not good. You can hear me sigh. You can hear if you listen to the recording, you can hear me clearly say, I mean, I don't know I'm doing it, but I'm like, oh man, and but I kept talking. That's one thing I was trained. Don't vapor lock. I kept talking. I was trying to get information. I was active listening. I'm trying to find out, I mean, I didn't see plastic on the floor, but I did see a rope. They've both brandished their pistols to me. One guy's on the steps, just hanging there. In other words, I'm not free to leave. Um, but yeah, it wasn't good. I was kind of in work mode too, but it's an oh crap moment. I mean, you get an adrenaline dump. Your auditory exclusion, everything you hear is in waves. Your time dilation, your eyes are clicking in screenshots. Man, you can hear and feel your heart beating through your whole body. Um, it's everything slows down, like slows down, and yeah, and then it happened more than once, right? So when I get carried down there, I'm like, oh boy, and then I'm answering questions, and I might level down a little. I might level. I'm like, okay, and then now I got to take all my clothes off, and I'm like, oh boy, and another adrenaline dump, and then I come back and I'm leveling out, and then they grab my clothes. So it was quite a roller coaster ride, but he missed it. By divine intervention in my world, man. But he missed it,
Wow.
and it was close.
Wow. That's and I wanted to touch on that too, because I think and again we talk a lot about mental health on here. The job itself is already dangerous. Doing this undercover work. And then I think a lot of people don't realize is, especially like with Hollywood, they see like on the shows that if they're undercover, okay, that's their entire job. That's it. That's their full-time job. With you, and for those who aren't familiar, you are not only working undercover, you're a case agent. You're also you're also part of the SWAT team.
Hmm.
You're a firearms instructor, and all the while too, you're a husband and a father.
Hmm.
So how, I mean, just one of those enough is already stressful, for 2 dozen lifetimes. How did you go about juggling all of that at the same time?
I didn't do it well. In the beginning, I didn't. I thought I was doing good, but then yeah, I wasn't at all. Um, but I will say this: I did that to myself. I
Mhm.
mean, now the Bureau, they let me do it, but it's not the Bureau's fault. The only thing I was required to be by the Bureau was a case agent. All those titles you mentioned, those are all collateral duties. You volunteer for SWAT, you try out if you make it. You volunteer to be a firearms instructor if if you pass the firearms instructor training certification, you get that. Undercover, same thing. Tactical instructor, defensive tactics instructor, active shooter instructor, all those things. But I chose. I mean, I'm a workaholic. I love doing more than one thing.
Mhm.
If you want to punish me, sit me in a desk from 9 to 5 and tell me I can't go anywhere. That's like watching paint dry to me. You'll get a lot more out of me if you let me. I'm going to work my butt off and it may be 80-hour weeks, but if you let me go do those other things, I'm going to be more likely to be driven to come back and bust my ass on the cases too. But I didn't do it well, and I'm glad you brought up the mental health because I push that a lot. I got a lot of peers and mentors that are out there pushing it as well, because we are. I mean, first responders and military. I tie that all together. We are number one in suicide. We're number one for divorce. We're number one for alcoholism and pills or whatever you want to throw in there now. And we're usually number one for dying within 5 years after retiring. So I haven't hit 5 years yet. What is it, 2025? June of
2025.
June 30th of next year. I won't be, if I can pass it, I won't be a statistic. But yeah, so in the FBI, we have a unit called Safeguard, and it was originally set up just for undercovers. But because it became the unit that was specialized in psychological assessments, like now you get like maybe somebody that's doing surveillance full time and they haven't been home and they're like, you know what, they should probably be psychologically assessed to make sure they're okay. Because it's not just talking to a psychologist, it's taking a bunch of tests. Some of them, a lot of people have taken just for their jobs, but then that spits out numbers into a graph. And then you sit down with a clinical psychologist or psychiatrist. They may be an FBI agent, they may be contracted in, but they definitely have their clearances, right? So you sit down with them for about an hour, and then you go sit down with a seasoned undercover for about an hour to somebody that can see through your BS if you're trying to BS, or we call it UC. We use undercover UC as a verb. We're like, don't you see me, you know? But then you see somebody else out there, like now people looking at child pornography and stuff. And then the headquarters, rightfully so, the FBI is like, man, these people should be getting psychologically assessed. Well, where should we send them? Well, Safeguard is a unit already set up for that. So they get inundated, but that's what it's there for. It's to make sure that you um, are mentally stable. It used to be real big on family. I hope they still are. I remember the days when if you were having issues with your family, I mean, the unit would hop in their cars and drive 3 states away or fly to wherever
Wow.
you're at and sit down with you and your wife. Or if it's a female, the female agent and her husband or partner, whatever. Um, because as type A personalities, it's kind of hard for us sometimes to say no and to step back, and we don't want to quit. We're gonna do whatever we got to do to finish it, whether that's a detriment to myself, my family, or whatever. So that's what it's there for. But we really need to start focusing more on that. I mean, I'm on LinkedIn big time. It's a shame how many suicides that you come across, um,
It
and it's
is.
sad. But uniform patrol, I tell a lot of people, I said, you think it's rare that you show up and everybody's happy to see you? I said, because I'll tell you, when you're in uniform patrol, in my experience, it's very rare. It's usually people are, get out of my house. What'd you stop me for? Spitting at you, cussing, until of course it's their house that gets broken into. Then they want you there.
Exactly.
Um, but yeah, we need to focus more on that. But for me, back then, yeah, I didn't do it well at all. And again, in the book, I go in great depth about it. But I crashed mentally and physically. I met my threshold, um, which I think changes daily. It's like working out. You leave your comfort zone in a workout. I mean, I go do Krav Maga or jits training. I mean, yeah, I'm probably going to leave my comfort zone 2 or 3 times in that workout if I'm doing it right. But some days you feel great, and it may take a while to leave that comfort zone or pass it, you know. Some days you're not feeling that great, and it doesn't take long at all to leave your comfort zone. So whatever time that was in my life, it caught me, and I crashed, man. I was like so tired. I slept. I got home from Daytona Bike Week with the Outlaws, and I think I slept the first 2 days, I might have slept close to 20 hours a day, but definitely for 5 days, I slept 16 plus hours a day. And that's just because I was that tired. Because I've been going at that pace for about 3 years, and I was a zombie, man. I was on hydroxy, anything with ephedrine. I was on hydroxy cuts. I was drinking way too much caffeine. I was on inhalers, antihistamines. I mean, I'd get on a plane. By the time I got off of it, I'd have a sinus infection. My body was just run down. But I met my threshold, and then I had to figure out how to build myself back up if it was possible. Had
Mhm.
to figure out how I got there in the first place, and not let it to happen again.
Um, and in your experience, because I always like to just get an idea of just everybody's departments, agencies a little different. Being in the FBI and then even maybe with the sheriffs too, was there a big stigma or any kind of stigma about saying like, hey, just mentally like I'm checked out.
Oh,
Like I'm not
absolutely.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, it's a tough crowd. I mean, like it's on the SWAT team,
Right.
you're out, you almost die. What are people doing? They're just cracking jokes because, alpha males, alpha female, we don't know how to deal with it sometimes. I go back to sports. Like, you'd have that star player that breaks their leg, snaps it in two, but nobody from the team goes and visits them in the hospital because there was a stigma of, well, if you go, it could be you next. Some kind of,
Right.
what am I trying to say? Superstition,
Right.
some kind of superstition. But yeah, it's tough. And I say this when I go out and speak and teach at narcotics and gang conferences and law enforcement conferences. I'm like, look, man, I get it. I get the stereotypical, you don't want to be in your department and go to that psychologist because you're afraid that that psychologist will leak something. I used to say, I mean, I tell the FBI to their face, I'm like, I said, my personal doctor, my GP, man, he knows everything there is to know about me. The FBI knows what they need to know. Because I'm like, if I go in there and I say, hey, I've seen them nut out over somebody taking Ambien. They're like, wait a minute. Headquarters gets involved. They're like, well, you take Ambien at night. Could that affect your driving the next day? Is there a liability? Now lawyers get involved. What if they get in a shooting? I'm like, dude, when y'all sent me to Africa, you told the doctor to prescribe me Ambien. So some of that stuff, that's big government. You just need to, but I get the
I get you.
stereotype of saying you're concerned about telling somebody, that's fine. I get it. But no, there's somebody else out there. And if you go to a therapist
Mhm.
and it doesn't work out, I'd use a line from one of my pastors, man. He's like, if you ever, he talks about being church hurt and stuff, but I use it for this as well because it applies. Say you go to a therapist and it doesn't work out and you didn't like them. Have you ever had food poisoning? Have
Hmm.
you ever been food poisoned? Did you
Hmm.
quit eating?
Nope.
No. I mean, I didn't eat at that place anymore, but I still ate. So that's the kind of the way I look at it. And that's what I tell them. I'm like, look, just know there's somewhere you can go
Mhm.
and find that help because imagine if I told you to build a house and all I handed you was a hammer and a screwdriver. That's it. It's going to be tough to build. But if I roll in here with all this badass equipment, air powered and everything, yeah, hey, we're going to make this thing nice and smooth. So look at it that way. That psychologist or counselor
Mhm.
has a toolbox that has way more tools in it than we know. But if you can teach me how to use those tools, that's very beneficial. And we've got to get better at that.
It's a great way of looking at it now, and I totally agree. I think it's come a long way. There's still a long ways to go, but I think
Yeah.
it's slowly but surely. I think we're getting there. But I actually wanted to because I mean, with everything you've done in your book, we could sit here for 3, 4 hours and talk about everything.
Easy, easy.
Easy, easy. Um, but just to go back a little bit, I know you didn't delve too much about in your book, but I actually wanted to get your take on it. How was working your work down on the Texas border?
Yeah.
How just how was that? And for those who aren't aware, just kind of what was going on during that time when you were working down at the
I was there from 2001 to 2008.
mm,
So pretty much that entire time, the head of
mm,
the Gulf cartel was OZL Cardenas. And OZL, I mean, it's the cartel, so it's going to be violent. Um, I will, let me explain this thoroughly because I did get a hate response from someone that says, you just said all Mexicans don't value life. I said, no, that is not what I said. I was talking about the cartel, but I didn't bite. I'm not going to argue about that stuff. But what I will say is, I am not saying, I've got tons of friends who are Latinos. And I've got tons of friends down there on the border who are Latinos. But when you were working that kind of stuff, and once you get into Mexico, like the cartel and those kind of everything kind of running on corruption and money, No, they don't value life like we do. I mean, some of the stuff that most people would find, some people may not even be able to fathom it in their head.
Mm,
Just chopping people's heads off, just like Al Qaeda. I mean, there's videos of them just sitting there sawing heads off, um, um, putting people in a 55-gallon drum of either diesel fuel or
yeah.
acid and setting them on fire alive or letting them be alive in the acid, and they might be torturing them to cut their fingers off or cut their hands off first, just brutal torture, and they turn them into soup. El guiso is what they would say. They turn them into soup. OZL had a, we thought they were wives' tales, but we confirmed them both. He had a line that he would feed people to. They had, or at least the cartel group there.
Right.
And then they had like a, I don't know if it's offensive, but a small person. They called it a midget. They called him a midget back then, but that was blessed in the nether regions, and he would rape people for the cartel. So the way it would work is you have to pay a quota. Whether you're drug smuggling or alien smuggling, to come through their territory, you got to pay a quota. So there was cases all the time with people missing their quota. There, whatever, say you got to pay a certain amount every 2 weeks. You
Mm,
miss a payment. Well, the Zetas, Zetas, back then was the enforcement arm of the cartel. They would come across, kidnap you, take you back, and be torturing you and be start extorting families for money, saying if you want this person back, we want this much money, or we're going to kill them. And we get involved, and you start going through a border liaison officer who reaches out to people that we've built relationships with through like liaison training. And they might reach out to a commandante and say, hey, this is the deal. It was this time of day at this cross street. The person's name is this. Three Suburbans pulled up. A bunch of dudes in BDUs jumped out, grabbed them, threw them in. About 30 minutes later, you get a call, go, okay, yep, they got him. And this is what the deal is. He lost this. He stole this, something like that. And then we start trying to get them back. But for the most part, I was down there. I was actually working human trafficking, not not so much for you're an undocumented alien coming in. We were looking for special interest aliens, which are undocumented illegal aliens coming into the country illegally from threat countries like China, like a lot of places in the Middle East. And that's what we were working. Same deal though. That they had to pay quotas.
mm,
Um, and we would see some pretty horrific things like some of the cases I worked that were mine. A case started with a 16-year-old mentally and physically challenged female, a Latina, that was left in the brush for dead. Because in the Rio Grande Valley, you come across the river,
mm,
that's step number one. Now you're at a staging location. And then at some point, a walker, a coyote, is going to come and get that group and walk them anywhere from 3 to 7 hours, depending on where they're at, through the brush around the checkpoints. It might be
mm,
Falfurrias, Cerritas, Hebronville checkpoint. It might be, but they're going to walk them around. So this 16-year-old mentally challenged female was left for dead, but thankfully the Border Patrol encountered her, but they couldn't figure out everything about her. So they didn't know how old she was. They called Child Protective Services. Child Protective Services starts interviewing her and is able to figure out that she was part of a three-family unit being smuggled in. It was her, her other sister, and her niece, because the rest of the family, who were Hondurans, were already in Manassas, Virginia, and they had paid to get them in. But
mm,
now they left her for dead. Now they've got the 5-year-old niece and the other sister, and they're saying that the 5-year-old's sick and they're going to dump her for dead if they don't pay more money. They're extorting them for more money to get around the checkpoint. And then we're up on the now we're chasing phones and we're doing everything we do. And after about close to 72 hours nonstop, we found the person in the phone, and to speed the story up, we ended up kicking in the door and finding the guy, finding the phones that were making the calls, found the ledgers with everybody's name in them, but that was not the stash house. So now we got to figure out how to get this guy, this cartel type member, um, to come clean and tell us where the stash house is. And we ended up getting it. And we kicked in another door, and that time I think we apprehended like 49 undocumented aliens. But we reunited the 5-year-old daughter. We reunited the aunt, the 5-year-old daughter, with the other aunt and the family in Manassas.
wow. Man, it's craziness you see on the border that I think a lot of people, at least a lot of maybe mainstream media doesn't show about just the
Yeah,
craziness going on,
yeah,
especially being fed to lions and well-hung
yeah.
little people.
Yeah,
It's
and then chopping hands off and chopping heads off. My understanding, because we took, I say we as Department of Justice took off OZL. I don't know if anybody had. I mean, nobody has a crystal ball, but it opened up a vacuum, and then everybody started fighting to be the leader of that territory. Like there's going to be a new person taking over the Gulf Cartel, but the safeties say, wait a minute, we're the enforcers, we're the paramilitary group, we're the one that kidnaps everybody. We should be running this. And then the Sinaloa cartel says, hey, we're going to move in and take territory. And then MS-13 says, and then it's a battle. And it might even be the federales in Mexico that are saying, no, it should be ours. And you end up, I don't know how it is now, but you end up with you driving through an area in a decent truck, and it might be a mission group. Because I know this is a story that actually happened. Um, they were just in a nicer truck, but they were in an area, let's say it's the cartel's area, and the Zetas or the Sinaloa cartel sees them. And they're like, who are you? Because you're not with us. There's no way you'd be in a vehicle like this unless you're with one of them. And they know, and next thing you know, you get a report of a van with 8 heads in it. No bodies, just 8 heads. And yeah, it's pretty brutal. But I've interviewed people like a former MS-13 member back in the day. He was Honduran, I believe. Even though most of your MS-13 is Mata Salvatrucha, El Salvador, but I think he was Honduran. But I'm interviewing this guy, and he's like, when he was like 8, he was see, or just as a child growing up, he's seeing people brutally murdered and left in the street, dead, just left in the street. So when you walk to the store or to school or whatever, you see that rotten dead body every day. Those are things that if you grow up that way and you're desensitized, it's tough. I mean, that's what you're used to. And through child psychology and the way the brain develops, their brain's not set up to understand that stuff at that age. So it's tough, man. I mean, it can get pretty brutal.
Scott. Before I let you go, I just wanted to just ask you just one more thing. Just a story from your book. Um, I believe it was a murder for hire plot
Hmm.
regarding, I believe it's a woman named Tammy.
Oh, yeah, Ohio.
Yeah. If yeah, I hope I never meet this woman. But for those for those
I sat
who
next to her, man, you
oh
know.
my God. And, and for those who were trying to figure out why we're laughing, I was wondering if you could maybe um just kind of delve into just a little bit about who Tammy is.
Well, I got a call from a case team out of
Mhm.
Ohio, the Columbus RA out of Cleveland, no, Cincinnati, Ohio. I get them mixed up in my head. Cleveland and Cincinnati, out of the Cincinnati office, but Columbus is an RA resident agency. Anyway, I get a call about a possible gig, and we thought that it was the husband, but me and another undercover ride out to go meet the husband somewhere in a rural area, and we we get there and we're talking to him, and it quickly we quickly realize, oh, it's not the husband's plan, it's the wife's plan. And he goes, well, that's really not my plan. It was my wife's. And I'm like, well, where's your wife? Because he thought we were bikers. I mean, shocker. I'm pretending to be a 1%er biker. Um, but he thought that we were bikers, and I said, well, where's your wife? And he's like, well, I think she's in there asleep. And I said, well, you're going to go wake her up? And he's like, well, you want me to? And I said, dude, I didn't drive all the way out here to meet you. I'm here to make money. If it's not your plan, go get her up. So he wakes her up. She comes out. Long and short of it is her son was involved with a lot of local drug dealers. So they knew what they were saying is they knew where the dope stashes were, where the guns were, where the money was at. And what they did is they were hiring us to do what became, once we found out, hiring us to do 4 home invasions and murder at least 2 people. And then we would get our payment would be proceeds from whatever. But the crazy stuff you're probably referencing is while we're driving around, and she's showing us these different houses, and okay, this is so and so's house. They keep the dope down here, blah blah blah, and we're like we're casing these places. Um, we're driving around, and she's like, "Hey," she starts telling me how she's all into torture. So I'm driving, she's in the front passenger seat, undercover's behind us, another undercover, good friend of mine, and he I mean, I'm sorry, she we're riding around. She starts telling me how much she likes torture and stuff, and I'm like, okay, well now Tammy, she's got on like hunting boots, but they're more like snake bite protection boots, come up to your knees. She's got on jean shorts. I think maybe a tank top. She's clawing herself. She's like she's tweaking. I mean, she's just like, let me tell you another thing. Let me tell you this skin flakes going all over the door and stuff. And
It's a wonderful sight.
yeah,
Yeah.
which when that day was over, I look over and my buddy's like wiping the door and sweeping the. I'm like, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Man, her skin's all over this stuff," and he's gonna sit in on the ride back. I go, oh, "Okay, my bad. I got some hand stuff. You can rub that
Yeah.
on there too. You'll get a can of Lysol." But she starts talking about torture and all this stuff, and I'm like, and then she starts describing it. She goes, "Yeah, you know, you can take a man's penis and you can take a hanger and bend the end of it. You can jam that hammer into the penis and rip it back out, and then you can pour salt in the wound." Now, in the back seat is like, "Oh," and I'm like looking, going, because I'm thinking, man, like 2 weeks earlier, I did have a lumbar fusion to correct my lumbar fusion that broke. That wasn't the thing that hurt the most. Somehow they messed up my privates during the procedure and I couldn't pee. So they dry cathed me with a full bladder and then took it back out and said if I couldn't pee on my own, I couldn't go home and they'd have to dry cath me again.
Oh,
So
shoot.
as she's describing this clothes hanger going into, I'm like, I kind of felt like that about 2 weeks ago, you know?
God.
Um, and then she goes on to say you can take a PVC pipe and stick it up somebody's anus and run barbed wire up through the PVC pipe and rip their colon out from the inside out. And I'm like, good Lord, man. That's what I'm thinking in my head. But again, backseat's like, goodness gracious, you know. And I lean over and I'm like, we pull up to a red light. She's describing all this stuff, and I lean over and look at her and I go, why are you so angry? I mean, you know, this is, and she keeps talking. And I'm like, okay, we keep driving around. We're looking at other houses. Then she tells us a story of her husband who went on a cocaine bender or meth. I wasn't sure, but basically he's gone for days. She couldn't find him. He'd been up for 3+ days. When he finally came home, she said, I told him to never do that again. And he did it. And when he came home, he passed out. He was so passed out. And he's a real skinny guy, right? She tells us that she takes a 2x4, shoves it under his back legs and butt, takes an industrial stapler and staples his nutsack, his scrotum, to the board. He didn't even wake up because he crashed that hard. But when he did wake up, he's trying. I mean, it's comical to me because I'm thinking about you wake up and you're trying to move and you're feeling all this pain, and but every time you move, it pulls because the board's behind him and he's stapled into it. And at that point, my buddy in the back goes, "Man, you really don't like men, do you?" At first, I think the line was "Remind me not to piss you off,"
Yeah.
and then it was like, "You really don't like men," and she said, "I've been unlucky in love." So if you think that was BS, the next time we met the husband, we asked, and he confirmed it right there in front of me. He goes, "No, she did it." And I'm like, "And you're still with her?" And he's like, "Man, I ain't never had nobody do nothing like that to me." And I'm like, "Well,
Shoot.
you and me are looking for different things in a
Right.
relationship, you know?" But yeah, they ended up hiring us to do that, and they ended up getting arrested and coming clean. So, but yeah, it's just one of those things. But in my head, at that I'm later in my career. In my head, I'm leaning over and I'm going, she's saying all this stuff, and I'm like, these are my people. And when I say that, I don't mean like these are the people I hang with. I'm like, this is where my skill set takes me. These are the cases I get. I end up in the woods. I'm not on the yacht. I'm not in a 5-star hotel. If I am, it's because I'm muscle for the person and I'm a backup, you know. My skill set puts me in violent gangs and things like that. But, you know, that's me.
Oh, well, Scott, I don't want to take up any more of your time again. I know God, we could talk for hours and hours and hours about this, but I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on today. And I just wanted to plug your book real quick, Codename
Sure.
Pale Horse. Um,
I got one sitting right here.
Yeah, if you want to
That's
show
my
that.
face. I will say this: be careful on Amazon. It has to show this face, and it's
Oh,
usually the most expensive one. I think it's only like 21 bucks now on Amazon. But on Amazon, there are a lot of fakes. Like everywhere else, like if you order from a bookstore or you order from Simon and Schuster,
mm,
that's it. But in Amazon, you'll see code name Pale Horse, and then below it'll be like AI where they've made my face older, and it'll say Agent Pale Horse Workbook. How I did this. And I remember calling the first time I saw like four of them. I called the publicist and Simon Schuster. I'm like, we didn't do a workbook, did we? Because I don't remember doing a workbook. He goes, no, that's a scam, man. It'll be for like 11 bucks.
oh, that's
And
good
then,
to know.
and we actually caught one the other day on YouTube, and it was somebody that had taken my book
Mm,
and they put a cheesy old video game graphic of somebody just driving, and they literally had AI reading my entire audiobook in a robot voice when I did the audiobook. The audiobook is my voice. So I caught that when I sent it to Simon and Schuster, and that was a cease and desist. They ripped that thing down pretty quick. But just be
good.
aware on Amazon. But that's it. Codename Pale Horse
Well,
with my
thank you.
ugly mug on it.
No, and I appreciate that you narrated it. I know I listen to a lot of audiobooks and sometimes just the narrator, I can't
Mm.
get through it, but I'm incredibly happy that you narrated it because no one else could do it. It was perfect.
I think that's what pushed us over the top that to be a New York Times best-selling author now. I'm pretty sure it was the audiobook that pushed us over the top.
and congratulations. That's it's an incredible book. Any oh, I know we talked about it in the beginning. Any plans to try to get like a second book going or any
Maybe
other
there's a lot of avenues right now. I mean, I feel like I mean, I know I've got another book in me for case agent stories, which would include the border and all that stuff. And like that
Mhm.
case I talked about, the 5-year-old girl being rescued. There's that, but a lot of my like my literary agent, my publicist, Simon and Schuster, my agent is like, you already did an autobiography, you New York Times bestseller. If you want to do something, look at like fictional series books. So there's that avenue. But
Mhm.
right now this stuff's being all walked around. My agents with CAA, so it's being walked around for possible TV, movie, something like that. So
Oh
we'll see.
wow.
If nothing happens, man, I mean, I'm still an active shooter instructor with Alert. They're the national standard for training law enforcement in the United States on active shooter response. Um, Not sure it's the wisest retirement decision. I'm 54 years old and I still get the living crap shot out of me. And all last week we were right outside of Memphis, and the place we were at, of course, the AC went out, and the second floor is probably 180 degrees, but we made it work. So I still
Yeah.
do that, but we'll see. There's several things. There's several, as they say, irons in the fire right now, and we'll see. Who knows?
Well, that's awesome. Well, I'm happy you're enjoying retirement. You're still staying active. I know it's kind of hard to let, you do it for almost 30 years. It's not something you could just shut off the next
It's
day.
true. Well, I'll tell you, that's another option. If my buddy wins sheriff, where I'm living, I'm probably bonding back in to at least help with training. So maybe I'll round it out to a nice 30-year career instead of 28.
Okay.
We'll see.
That'd be awesome. There you go. Well, again, everybody, yeah, check out Codename Pale Horse, available now. Simon and Schuster, and again, watch out for any scams on Amazon. Scott Payne, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you coming on, and thank you so much for sharing your stories, and look forward to hearing more.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much.